Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and friends of friends, pets, dogs, everyone, to Japanese 101, a lesson of a number. Because I've lost track. We're in the 30s, I think. 20s. We're in the 20s. Lesson 20 something. Let's go. Sakura-san, oyasumi. Yes. Let's hop in. 大丈夫ですよ。今日はね、文法のレッスンなんだから、多分、ね、母語話者としてはそんなの必要ないと思いますので、はい。ゆっくり寝てください。ゆっくりっていうか、ぐっすり寝てください。Today we're talking about giving and receiving. And talking about receiving, I will receive that subscription from Evie. Thank you so much for 2 months. Welcome back. I appreciate that. Is it gonna read it like, what is it gonna read it? Sang. Thank you, Takumi. Arigato! Welcome back. So, what is giving and receiving all about is not hard, okay? Basically, the principle of giving and receiving is what you would expect. It's two people doing some sort of transaction, okay? So either it's a matter of perspective. This is going to be important today. Today is going to be all about perspective. What do I mean with perspective, okay? It's if we're looking at this person, let's call this person A, and let's call this person B, okay? If our perspective is on A, and this happens, then obviously A is receiving and B is giving, okay? That's the important part. So from A's perspective, B is giving something, and from A's perspective, A is receiving something, okay? So basically, from this perspective, we would say like, okay, well, I'm receiving and they are giving, okay? And vice versa, okay? So this same transaction from the perspective of B obviously is the opposite, where so if we're in the perspective of B and this transaction happens, then of course they are giving and the other person is receiving. This seems obvious, okay? But it's very important that we keep that in mind, and especially later on in this lesson when we're going to talk about how exactly to use the verbs that I'm about to introduce, okay? So, because Japanese makes our life a little bit trickier here than in English, because in English you can see we have 1, 2, okay? We have giving and receiving. Not so in Japanese. Japanese generally will have 2 verbs for giving, which is... So this is kind of generally speaking, right? And 1 for receiving. So this here, we have kureru. Kureru and ageru. Kureru and ageru, and this is morau, okay? Morau. Kureru, ageru, and morau. I'll just make like spaces in between here. So, giving is kureru and ageru. So here is where it gets a little bit confusing. Well, not confusing, but it's different than English. English manages with just the verb to give. He gives to me, I give to him, she gives to her, they give to them. That all works out. Very simple. Japanese doesn't work like that. We have 2 different giving verbs. We have kureru and we have ageru. And we have a receiving one, which is morau. So how does that work? Well, to really understand the difference between kureru and ageru, we have to talk about what is maybe best described as the concepts of Soto and Uchi. And it works in like circles. Hey, my Jason. I want to call you Jason. Is that okay? Because Jensen maybe. Hello. So because basically this whole concept revolves around circles of familiarity, okay? 27, wow, coming up on 30, true. So let's look at how these circles work, okay? I'm gonna make space because I need some space to draw this appropriately. Ooh, frick. That's why you need to lift off your pen every now and again, so that a Control-Z doesn't go all the way back. What we do here is go back. So, another social status thing, kind of. So this is kind of that. It's similar. So the concept of what we're going to talk about today is basically Uchi versus Soto. In kanji that looks like this. Uchi being nai versus Soto. Soto being outside, so that's gai or Soto. Uchi versus Soto. Okay, so this is Uchi. And this is Soto. Now, red is the most convenient way, that's where the fun is. Yeah, okay, I'll call you Jason then. Uchi versus Soto, what does that mean? Uchi means inside. Okay, this is like inside, this is outside. But it goes beyond that. The concepts of Uchi and Soto basically work with rings of familiarity, like I said before. Ah, Samon's Kushi-san, konnichiwa, konbanwa. So basically, you are always in the middle, okay? Because, why is that? It's basically because 俺はその福は内、そうそう。確かにね、それもあり。So basically, the person you're most familiar with is yourself, okay? So this is you. This is you, okay? You are the closest circle. You are the innermost circle because you yourself are the most familiar to yourself, okay? So you are the most Uchi that you can be. Remember, Uchi inside, Soto outside. So you are, it doesn't get any more Uchi than you yourself, okay? So you are like the closest circle, that's you. You're right here. This is you, okay? Do I even know me? Listen, that I can't answer. There is another circle where it's something like this, right? It goes like that. And then you have, maybe you have like family. Slave, thanks for the follow. Foro, arigatou gozaimasu. So maybe you have like a sister or parents, right? Maybe these are your parents or something. Very close. Family, okay? Let's say this is like family. There's no like clear, there's not like clear hierarchy here. It's just, you know, konbanwa. There's not like a clear hierarchy. It's more just like to illustrate the concept, okay? And then beyond that, okay, you may have something like, you know, your school. I'm gonna try and draw like a school building as much as I can. So maybe, let's say this is like your school building, okay? School, company, okay? So this is like, here you would have stuff like school or company that you belong, no one can read this. You have like a school or you have a company or some like institution that you belong to, okay? You belong to. And then we keep going out, okay? And then like maybe even further outside this, like here you may have like other companies, right? So out here, it's like, you know, other groups, etc. So basically, as we go in, okay, as we go this direction, we are moving from Soto to Uchi, okay? So this is like the Soto part. And then we're moving in towards Uchi. We're moving in from the outside, okay? Town and then prefecture. Yeah, like it doesn't matter, right? It's about comparing two people, saying like, okay, well, this group is probably more close to me and this group is more removed from me. So this place, you're moving in, okay? You're moving on to the inside, okay? Now, and remember, we're just doing this to understand kureru and ageru. Morau is a bit separate from this concept, at least like a little bit. So to understand kureru and ageru, when a object moves in, so say like, maybe a good illustration would be if your mom gives you a present, then your mom did the action of kureru, okay? Because when an action, when a giving, okay, when a giving takes place and it moves towards you, it moves from Soto to Uchi, that is kureru, okay? So here it would be kureru. So your mom giving to you, I'm gonna put an M here and here like a D for that, okay? Your mom giving you a present would be her doing kureru, okay? If that makes sense. Okay, so when something moves in, let me just make this a bit more clear. I'll just do it more general now. Wait, I want this to be white. So dad and mom, when something moves this way, just gonna draw like straight up like an arrow. This direction is kureru. And obviously then the opposite direction would be ageru, okay? So, ageru. Alright, now these arrows aren't to symbolize that it has to come from here and it has to go to your family. It's just a general direction. So, if your schoolmate gives something to your family, you would use kureru. If another company does something for your company, you would use kureru, because all of these actions are moving in. They're all moving from the outside in. So when someone else does something, like gives something, and that giving takes place from an outside circle towards an inside circle, that is always kureru. Okay? Sounds complicated, but you know. If you're as Uchi as a cat, is everything that you yourself receive always going to be kureru? Most of the time, yes. Yeah. There's rarely ever a case where you would use someone else and like... yeah, it's basically always going to be kureru, yeah. Because it would be considered, rude else. Isn't ageru to go up? Yeah, you can see it like that as well. So, these kanji are actually slightly different. If you look at the kanji for both of these, you'll see that ageru. With ageru, it's a bit like, but I'll show you. So here, if we look up ageru, right, we can see to give. There, to give example. So sometimes, especially, yeah. So ageru is a bit of like a weird one. Like sometimes it's like this one that's used, even though here it's summon or give an example to cite. So for ageru, it's kind of the same, right? For ageru, usually you will use either no kanji or this kanji. Actually here, to give, right? So usually in plain kana, right? You would either use this kanji or no kanji at all, is kind of the way it goes. For kureru, there is actually another version, kureru. Generally would use this kanji, kureru. You can see it here, so kureru. But again, kureru also most of the time is in kana only. Hey, thank you for the follow, Kazumitsu-san. Follow, arigatou gozaimasu. So, to give, to let, to have. The receiver is the speaker, someone close to the speaker. So nice summarize. Yeah, so I'm sure there's like a lot of pictures online. Yeah, basically this, right? See, this is basically the picture that I just drew. Can you see how, like, this illustration basically works in the same way, right? When it moves outside from Uchi to Soto, then it's ageru. When it moves inside, it's kureru. And also, here also something that I always forget to mention is that if a transaction takes place laterally here, it's generally also ageru. So when like your mother gives something to your dad, that would also be ageru generally. Kureru wa そうね、くださる、下る、つながってる。まあ、多分ですよね。So the connection that you could draw between something like kureru and going up and down would be the following. It's basically that when someone else gives to you, or someone that's close to you, you symbolize that as an action happening from the top down. Because in Japanese, politeness is all about raising the other people and lowering yourself down. Okay, so imagine a transaction of someone else giving you something as something coming from the top down. So kind of like kureru, it comes from the top down. And then imagine the opposite, where you give to someone else or someone on your side gives to someone on the outside. That would be like an ageru, because you would want your side to be lowered and their side to be raised. I mean that obviously figuratively, but it works pretty well if you visualize it. Use kureru, you always identify with the recipient. No, so remember that both kureru and ageru mean to give. It's not really about identifying, it's mostly about who's the subject. So when we talk about kureru and ageru, the subject must always be the person that is giving. Whether that is you or someone else, but they are giving. They're taking something and they're giving it to someone else. It just depends on, relative to yourself, who that person is giving something to. Or if that person is you giving something to someone else. So like, the same way I can say, I give to you, I can also say you give to me. It's just that in Japanese, two different verbs need to be used here. And I'll make some examples, okay? So, let's actually look at this example, okay? So, I give to you. In English, I give to you. Well, we can look at our little illustration, right? So what is I give to you? Well, you're not maybe part of my family, so you're probably somewhere in here. So I give to you would be an action that happens from me to this. Okay, so I need to use ageru because the direction goes from Uchi to Soto. So it would be 私は何々 well, 私は we usually do something like あなたにあげる or something like that, right? We give something to you. So I would use something like they really simplify. This is not like the most natural sentence because you would definitely leave out 私は, but it doesn't matter here. 私は is our subject because we are the person giving, and then we would do like something. It doesn't matter. I'll just draw a box here. This is not a kuchi, okay? It's just a box. Maybe I should do something else. I'll do a triangle so that it's not confusing. Not confusing with like kuchi or ro or something like that. 私は something を So you would mark the thing that you're giving with を and then あなたにあげる, right? あなたにあげる. And it gets us right into also the discussion of what kanji to use. What particles to use. あげる. 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 Okay? Again, we don't really care about what we're giving. The important things here is that we use あげる because it's from me to someone else. It's あげる. And then particle usage. So, 私は初見です。よろしくお願いします。今日はね、文法のレッスンです。I'm talking from my own perspective. I'm the one giving, so I'm the subject, right? I'm the subject of that sentence. So it has to be 私は or 私が. We're not going to talk about wow versus God today. I did an episode on that. So here, 私は making me the subject and the topic. The triangle is just anything, doesn't matter. 三角を or 何々をあなたにあげる. I will give you something, okay? I'm giving you something. So here, particle usage, the thing that you give is just marked with を and the person you give it to is marked with に. Those are the important particles here. あげる is transitive, so you can say like 何かをあげる to give something, right? And then に just used as a sort of target marker. You mark who you're giving to, right? So to whom you are giving a thing. It's just あげる、私は何々をあなたにあげる. I give you something, if that makes sense. Let's turn this situation on its head and basically do the reverse and see how that would work out. So, basically, the other way around would be the opposite. You give to me, okay? You give to me. So now we can look at our handy little drawing again, and we can be like, okay, how does this happen? Well, it happens from here. You're probably somewhere here. Maybe you're part of my family, but even then, it probably moves like this. And since we're moving from Soto to Uchi, we have to use Kureru. Alright, so in this case, me being here and you being somewhere here, we would use Kureru, right? わかります。いいですね. So once again, we would have our sentence. Remember, we're all your family. Yeah, you're all my family. Thank you. All one big family. Remember, the person giving must be the subject. So now, if you give to me, now you are the subject. So I would write like あなたは, or it could also be a name, ボブさんは whatever, doesn't matter. But in our case, for convenience, あなたは is very easy. So あなたは, that's the subject, right? You are the subject. You're doing the giving after all. And then I'm gonna do another triangle. Oh, and you can see like particle usage is exactly the same. And then 私に私にくれる. Make this red. くれる, okay? Not the best handwriting I've ever had, but you get the gist. あなたは, so you're the subject and the topic. 何々を the thing that you are giving, again marked with を, very simple. That's what you're giving after all. It's transitive. 私に the I marked with に once again because I am the direction, the target of that action. So particle usage is really exactly the same. Just a matter of perspective. And now we can insert anything into triangle as well. So it could be something like keiki or presento. Like presento is obviously really useful in this case because presents by definition are things that we give to each other. So for example, and I'm just gonna do like a whole bunch of example sentences now to get you like familiar with this topic, right? So for example, we can pick any two places. We can pick like, say, my company and someone else's company. So let's say a representative of another company is coming to our company and is presenting our company president with a gift. Now, I choose this purposefully because even if it's your president, you would still use kureru if someone from outside your company is giving him a present, or him or her, them a present. As well, you can just put a mouse to indicate telling someone else gifted to you as well. Can you put someone else's name? Yeah, you can. Well, anata here is just a stand-in for the subject. Anata could also be like Tanaka-san, or it could be ototo, or it could be like tonari-san, otonari-san no, なんていうか, otonari-san means like neighbor, right? It could be all of those things. It's just because I need a word for the subject, and here I just chose you, which is the arbitrary whatever you person is. All we know is that if it's you and me, then it's very clear where we use kureru and where we use ageru. Because of this like drawing, because I am the most uchi. It doesn't get more uchi than me, so if anyone else other than me is giving, and I make them the subject, it will always be kureru. And if anyone other than, if I'm giving, then it's always ageru if I'm the subject, right? So let's say you have someone visiting from another company, and they're giving your company president a gift. Now, obviously, your company president has a higher standing than you, but still, we just consider the drawing. We just think about, okay, so we have another company, which is out here, and this is my company, right? So the action happens from here to here, so we have to use kureru. And that is true. Even if it's your president, it doesn't have as much to do with your direct relation with the two parties, but rather the two parties' relation relative to you, if that makes sense, right? It's all about these arrows. If they're coming in, it's kureru. If they're going out, it's ageru. So even in this extreme situation where you're talking about your president, you would still say like, something like daihyo-san ga, well, daihyo means like representative, so like 他の会社の人が我が社の社長にプレゼントをくれました. If that makes sense. I should probably type that down for you so that it's not all that confusing. I will do that. So just give me a second and we'll type that because it is a bit of a longer example, so that we don't get confused. So just put this here. I will use a Japanese font, if I can find a good one. Meido. I'm just gonna use Meido at a font size of like 60, if I'm right. Yeah. So this would basically look like this, right? So, 他の, well, I'm gonna write it in white. So we have a sense of like, and honestly, and like, again, this is probably not like, in company situations, you probably use keigo or whatever, but that's not the point I'm trying to make. So let's just focus on like the usage of kureru and ageru and whether this is like a realistic sentence to actually happen when you talk about like company relations is a different question, but I don't want to like have to like use keigo here and confuse you even more. It's really more just about illustrating like when to use which. So you just like, okay. 他の会社の、まあ、人is fine, just a person. So, a person from another company, ga, and I'm going to use ga here because he's the subject. That person, he or she, is the subject of our sentence because they are doing the giving, right? 教えてくれ. Yeah. So, by the way, no-brainer, we're going to talk about combining this with the te form next week because I think it's like a bit much to cram it all into one thing because we haven't even talked about like もらう yet. So 他の会社の人が我が社 is just a nice word. 我が社 means my company, our company. 我が社の社長にプレゼントをくれた. まあくれました, right? to be polite. So you can see here, 他の会社, another company, の人, a person. So this is a good place to also review really quick no functionality. If you have a string like this, you have 人 at the end. So it is about a person. And then what kind of person is it? It's a 会社の人. It's a person from a company. So what company is it? It's a 他の会社. So it's another company. It's not your company, it's another company. くださった. Yeah, you would probably use like くださる in this case. この場合はまあ多分ね、この本当にこういうシチュエーションがあるときには多分そのくださるっていう言葉を使うはずなんですけど、まあとりあえずね、今はちょっとこう敬語を無視し、続きましょうね。他の会社の人、a person from another company が我が社の社長にいただいた。我が社の社長にプレゼントをくれました。So basically 敬語だね。Yeah. A person from another company が is the subject. So that person did something. 我が社の社長に the president of our company に to him marked as the target by にプレゼントをくれました。So they gave our president a present, right? And this would theoretically be correct. So even though you're talking about your president, you would still use kureru because, like I said, we are moving from the outside in because it's another company and my company. So those two things, my company is closer to me than another company is. So when it moves from their company to mine, it is from Uchi to Soto. Sorry, the other way around. It's from Soto to Uchi, which corresponds to kureru here on the image because it's coming in. Okay? And if we just flip this on its head, theoretically, if it was our president giving to another company, we would use ageru, because then the situation is reversed and we would go from the inside out, from my company here somewhere to another company here somewhere. I hope this makes sense. It sounds confusing because it's like so different in English, but it's really not. So all you need to keep in mind are these like situations that basically correspond to this picture. And you can think of any sort of situation. And then the one thing to keep in mind is that generally if something happens laterally, like from my mom to my dad, the convention is to use ageru. So if your dad gives something to your mom or your mom gives something to your dad, you just use ageru. That's kind of the default at that point. So you would just say like, お母さんがお父さんにプレゼントをあげた. My mom gave my dad a present, right? Okay, so I want to test this a little bit. So I'm going to give you a sentence, okay? And I want you to type that sentence in Japanese in chat. So how would you say, I'm going to start really simple. Okay, so this is an interesting sentence. I'm not sure if I should say it. Let's not start with something like this. How would you say, I give my little brother a carrot? How would you say, I give my little brother a carrot? Just think about it. Try and write that down in chat, just so I can see if there is a lot of confusion. If you want, you can also try and like leave out the first person particle. Okay. Karotto. Ninjin. Thanks for the clear information. You're welcome. I mean, I hope it's clear, right? Toto ni. Okay, good. Wedge corrected himself. It's good. Toto ni ninjin o ageta. Ah. Okay. Hey, thanks, Beavis. Arigato. Karotto. Kakarotto. Alright, so we have a few different versions in chat right now. So, if we give to our little brother... So, the reason... Ninjin o kureta. So, the reason I chose your little brother is to confuse you. Because, you think that little brother... Oh, yeah, little brother, so I'm above my little brother and it goes down. But no, that's not true. That is irrelevant. You have to look at the picture. Where is your little brother in this picture? Well, your little brother is here, and you are here. So where does the action happen? Well, it happens like this, right? So it should be ageru, because it happens from the inside out, right? Does that make sense? This is where the action happens, so it needs to be ageru. It goes this direction, so it needs to be ageru. There's nothing to do whether they're your little brother or older brother or anything like that. You just have to look at the illustration. I'm actually feels that, man. カロットは何孫悟空の本名そうカカロット Wait, was that it? Dude, I never seen Dragon Ball. 1010! Thanks for the resub. 7 months. Thank you very much. Looking forward to this one. Yeah.
7ヶ月のせいで
死んであげるぞ。死なないでよ。So I'm gonna go through your sentences. So cold. No, wait. I think Wedge was the first one. 僕は弟に and you corrected that later. 弟に人参をくれる. So it would be correct if it was あげる. In this case, it needs to be あげる. No Brainer has the correct version. Well, カカロット. Well, except for カカロット, but yes. Then I think Colt 弟に人参をあげた. Good, nice. いっぱい人参あげた. Yeah, so a lot of you got it right. You know what's funny is that あげる can also mean to fry something. So just that you wouldn't use ni that way, I guess. But in a weird way, it can kind of sound like I fried a carrot for my brother. But then it would actually be like あげてあげる. But don't worry about that, okay? Just don't worry about frying carrots for now, alright? It's just funny to me. But yeah. カカロットはドラゴンボールの悟空の本当の名前です。そうですね。みんなそう言ってます。炒めるみたい。Yeah, so I think there is a difference between itameru and ageru, but I forgot. That's for next week. That is for next week. Next week we'll learn how to fry carrots for other people. So, okay. Is this clear, right? So with this example, right? Does that sort of, for those of you that got it wrong, you understand why it is ageru, right? It's because it happens what like drew here, right? It happens from here to here. And that's why it's ageru. But I understand. That's good. Both ichidan, yeah, ageru and kureru are both ichidan, because they're both just eru verbs, basically. Itame, fry pan, and ageru, deep fry. I think so, yeah. I think you're right. I think you are right. Let's do another example, okay? What would you say for my neighbor gave my mother a present? My neighbor gave my mother a present. How would you do that? Should be maybe a bit more obvious in this case. What about the keigo? The keigo. Well, probably I'm gonna talk about that like briefly. To fry. What? What? You what, mate? Beavis. If you want to see, I made like... Wait, is it still in my... it's still in my clipboard. For all of you who missed it, okay? We hit 1,000 followers on Twitter like a few days ago, and I made a video for it, posted it on Twitter. You can watch it here if you want to watch a highlight video thingy. Ageru and Kureru have formal versions. Yeah, we'll mention them later. They're not really... it's not the end of the world, but yeah. Okay. Hahaoya ni. Kado. Oh, kado. I don't hear kado a lot. I always hear presento. But yeah, kado actually does exist. Is it... I thought it was... Is it kado or kado? It does? I've heard it before. Or maybe I'm thinking about something. I think it does. No? Maybe I'm imagining it. Isn't that French though? Maybe... I mean, kado means angle. Corner, angle, rough works. And maybe I'm making it up. Maybe I'm just confusing it because it sounds... Yeah, it's French. Kado. It's just presento in this case is much better. I for a second I thought it existed, but it's probably just my brain being confused about French. So I think people are using kureru, presento, kureta. That's good. What's the word for neighbor? You can use yeah, otonari-san. Someone used rinjin, which is okay. Rinjin is a bit more of a formal word. I don't hear it as much. Otonari-san is like more casual and more common, I would say. But rinjin is okay. Rinjin just sounds like very formal. Rinjin is what you find in like love thy neighbor and stuff like that. But yeah. But I mean, it's not wrong. Rinjin. But otonari-san sounds a lot more friendly. It's like you actually know the guy. Otonari-san. Next door neighbor. Yeah. But it's both are fine. Both are fine. And then also, ni is used, so hahaoya ni, that's good. I think all of you had that correctly. Hahaoya ni, that's very good. Presento o kudasaimashita. Yeah, so in Dutch, or maybe in German it works. Nice. By accident, kado, no. Yeah, so kado is not Gokinjou-san. Yeah, Gokinjou-san is another one. Wait, what would that be read as? Moririn? Moririn no rinjin? The sentence. Oh, I see. Thank you. I'm going to say Ayafumi-san. Yeah. Alright, so but I think most of you... Shinrin, right. I keep forgetting Shinrin, Moririn. Shinrin. I think most of you get it. Okay, I'll write it on to the illustration as well. So how does that happen? Well, we have family here, so our neighbor would be somewhere here, and our family is here, so plop, kureru, right? None of you had it wrong, so I assume that you understand. This here is the biggest hurdle to understanding kureru and ageru. And if you understand this, the rest is pretty easy, okay? Because this is just, keep this in mind. Whenever kureru and ageru come up, keep this in mind. In general, when giving and receiving comes up, then, you know, this is what you need to think about, basically. Waishi no rinjin te kawaii manga ga atta. He. So there's a scary manga that's called Mr. Wise Neighbor. Got it. Kureru ageru. But Eve-san, what do we say if my mom gives to my dad? Oh, I explained this earlier. It's this little arrow here. The default, if something happens like laterally, or you can really not say which one is closer to you and which one is further, is ageru generally. The default there being ageru. Got it. Asakura-san. そうですかね。はい。So now I understand they say itadakimasu instead of equivalent kureru, only morau is receiving. Well, so I'm gonna talk about like itadaku and kudasaru and like sashiageru and all of these a little bit. So this the goal of this lesson isn't really to learn all the keigo about it, but yeah, we can at least mention it. So this is the concepts of Soto versus Uchi, or Uchi versus Soto, okay? So let me just make some space now, and we're gonna talk briefly about morau and what the difference is. So really, we had kureru and ageru, so giving. Kureru, ageru should be mostly clear now. So I will do sort of a cheeky little ageru, kureru. Okay, so we kind of get these, okay? And you might not mess up as much. Yeah, well, it depends on, it's a matter of perspective with morau. Gonna take a little process this. Yeah, so that's why I don't want to like do the other part as well today. That's why I'm gonna focus on just these three. So now, what is morau, okay? Morau is just to receive. Morau is to receive. So it's a matter of changing perspectives. Receive. Because, and this is the interesting part, when someone gives, someone must receive. And when someone receives, someone must give, right? We can agree on that. Well, generally, at least, I can't even really think of a possibility where that wouldn't be the case. Giving and receiving are two sides of the same transaction. It just depends on what side you're looking at. A transaction happens, and there must be a person that gives or gets taken away, but that's not really what we're talking about. This is a agreed upon transaction. Someone is giving, someone is receiving. So whenever something happens, the other thing must also happen. When someone gives, someone must receive. Right? Like, something changes. So whether you choose to focus on the giving part or the receiving part is actually entirely up to you, and is entirely part of the perspective or the sort of effect that you want to go for. And that's true in English as well. I can say I got a present, or I can say I received a present from my parents, but I can also say my parents gave me a present. The difference is really just in perspective. In one sentence, when I say I received a present, then the focus is on me receiving. The focus is on me, I am the subject of the action to receive, okay? When I say my parents gave me a present, the focus is on my parents doing the giving. The action of them doing the giving is the focus, and they are the subject of the sentence. So there's both a difference in focus and a difference in grammar, in as far as who we have to make the subject for this to work. We cannot just keep the subject the same and expect the sentence to still mean the same, because that would be different, right? So that's how it works in Japanese as well, is that morau is to receive. So if you want to emphasize the fact that you received, then you would use morau. So once again, we're going to make an example sentence. So also I'm going to do this to illustrate particle usage once again. So, for example, we could say, お母さん And here is a little bit of a difference. With もらう, we can actually use から. We can use から to mark the thing, to mark the person that we received from. Which makes sense. から does often translate to from. Okay, and in this case it does as well. So I'm going to make the sentence like really simply, お母さんから。お母さん、から. I'm gonna make the particles and everything red, so that's a bit easier to see what the particles are and how to use them. から, and then we're just gonna use a triangle again, because it really doesn't matter what we received. Once again, we use お with the thing that we receive. お母さんから三角をもらいました or もらった. Now again, whether you use もらいました or もらった is just a matter of situation. If the situation asks for you to be polite, then you would use もらいました. If the situation asks for you to be casual, then you would use casual もらった. Note that もらう, different than あげる and くれる, is a 語段 verb, so you have to remember 語段 conjugation, which I hope you do at this point. So もらった would be the casual version of that, so we would just write もらった. And I'm running out of space. There we go. もらった. Okay, yes, Illuminati, they're everywhere. They're lurking in the shadow. 伊予島から no 手紙. That's an interesting way of spelling 伊予. I can't say that I've seen many names like that, if that's a name. Alright, so お母さんから何々をもらった. I received something from my mom. That's really it, okay? There isn't really much else to, Is that Iojima? Nice. Sulfur Island? Isn't Iyo like sulfur? ゆうさんから日本語授業をもらった. Note that, Soisinyo, note that you have a small tsu in moratta. Listen, I didn't write it very well. Okay, I'm gonna write it on the other line so it's clear. But do be sure that it is actually moratta and not moratta. Beyond scope of lesson, but ageru and kure get used in passive form ever. Yeah, they do. Ageru and kure can be used in passive. So, let me think, if it makes sense. Because, I mean, they're transitive, so I think it should work, but I'm not sure how. Now that I think about it, I don't think it's common, actually. I think it should be possible. So, agerareru. Presento. Yeah, theoretically you could. It's a bit weird, because then you are speaking from the perspective of the present. The present was given to me by my mother. So, プレゼントがお母さんに私にくれられ. It's a bit weird. I don't hear it. Grammatically speaking, it should work, but it's a bit weird. Now that I'm trying to make it work, I'm like, I've never heard that. So I would say that grammatically speaking is totally possible, but I don't think anyone does it. 伊予島. 伊予さんに日本語授業をしてもらった. そうそう。日本語の授業を受けた is better, I think so. Yeah, that's true. In this case, 授業 is usually 受ける. So I received a lesson from someone. Yeah. That's, again, the problem with these things is there's grammar, but then there is like actually knowing what words to choose. So sometimes while a thing may seem cool in translation and the grammar is alright, there's maybe still a more natural way of saying it. Words are difficult. What do words mean? So, but yeah, I hope that stick to figure, I hope that does kind of answer your question there. I don't see it much. Like my direct response was like, that's totally possible, but then thinking about it doesn't seem very common at all, actually. I couldn't say that it's very often done. Because these actions of kureru and ageru are very much people-focused, so focusing the on the object that's being given is a bit weird from a Japanese perspective. Yeah, ukeru is also to receive, that's true. But ukeru is kind of like a different kind of receiving something. Ukeru is kind of to take something from, like, man, what would be the difference between ukeru and morau now? That's an interesting question. Ukeru to morau no chigai wa gutaiteki ni nan nan deshou ne? Yeah, What about favors, like tetsudatte kure? We're gonna talk about that next time. It's like into your hands. Yeah. Kind of, yeah. But then jugyo is ukeru as well, but you don't receive a lesson into your hands, right? So it's a bit weird. But then again, you also use ukeru for taking a test. So, yeah, that's complicated. Jugyo ukeru is more like a set phrase. Yeah, but then testo o ukeru will also be a set phrase, and kyoiku o ukeru is also a set phrase. Like, you see, there's like, we end up with a lot of ukeru exceptions. Yeah, ukeru. To take, to undergo. It's whatever. More focusing on myself and what I was focusing to others. Yeah, that's probably true. I feel like with ukeru, it's much more of a self-contained thing. And with morau, it's very much a transactional thing, in my opinion. Like, morau really, it has to do with gratitude and that someone else is actually giving. Whereas with ukeru, it seems that the aspect of someone else actually giving it to you is almost not regarded at all. Like, when you say jugyo ukeru, you're not in any way like thinking much about the school side or the person that is actually doing it for you. Whereas if you use morau, the focus or the emphasis always carries that sort of gratefulness with it, and you're thinking about, oh no, 420. I love uppusu. Thank you, Tenten, I appreciate that. Oh man, I love uppusu. Uppusu is hilarious. Does that make sense with morau though? I think that would be a good thing to regard, is that I feel like ukeru is more self-contained and doesn't as much focus on the giver at all, whereas morau does very much still focus on the transactional aspect of it, and also contains an element of gratitude, which we will come back to when we look at like temorau as well next week. I keep saying this, but yeah, because it's too much. You can tell there's already a lot to explore just within this little topic. There's one last thing that I really want to mention, and that is sort of keigo versions of these three verbs, okay? Just so you're not confused too much, we're just gonna quickly talk about some keigo, okay? And this is gonna be pretty short. Some keigo, because keigo is complicated and annoying, but some keigo, okay? We have three verbs. We have kureru, we have ageru, and we have morau. So, 敬語は難しい。敬語難しい。kureru, okay? In 敬語 often turns into くださる, okay? くださる。ageru often turns into something like 差し上げる or yeah, like 差し上げます. So basically you would have let me see. So basically 差し上げる would be generally the kenjougo of that action, and often kenjougo does also make sense. So think about ageru happening from your perspective outwards. Using kenjougo or humble language already kind of makes sense there, whereas kudasaru by nature is respectful language. It's sonkeigo, because it's the opposite. It's someone else coming closer to your circle. So a sonkeigo phrasing makes a lot of sense. Tomito 何富と名声富と名声さんフォローありがとうございます Thank you for the follow. So here you have I hope I'm not gonna run out of space. I think I'll be fine. 差し上げる and morau is itadaku, and itadaku is probably the one that you've heard the most, because it's where itadakimasu comes from. I'm gonna like space these apart like that. There. Itadaku. What's keigo? Keigo is very polite language. If you know nothing about keigo, then don't worry about it. I might make lessons on keigo. The issue with keigo is that understanding keigo is basically understanding polite culture in Japan. Like, you can't really understand keigo if you don't understand why it exists. And it exists because that sort of hierarchical politeness system is very ingrained into the Japanese culture. But in simple terms, it's just a way of being more polite. And often that involves switching out words or using specific conjugations. And in this case, there is these three words, kureru, ageru, and morau, have keigo, let's call them substitutes, that are more polite. So kudasaru belongs to kureru, ageru, often you might hear sashiageru, and morau, itadaku. Okay, you can find all three of these in the dictionary, and dictionaries will usually also tell you where they're from. So here you have sashiageru, you can see it just means to give, to offer. Kudasaru, sashiageru, itadaku. Yeah, so and Evie also provided the kanji there. It's very nice. So you might also see the kanji sometimes. So we have itadaku. Now, again, why do we say itadakimasu when we eat? It's because we're saying that we're receiving the food. We're being polite about the fact that we receive food. That's where itadakimasu comes from. It means I am about to receive. くださる相手が自発的にくれたもの、いただくこちらが要求したことによって発生したもの。Yeah, that's also a good insight. So, くださる or I guess the same would go, まあ、くれるともらうの、くれるともらうも同じようですね。So basically, くださるis that something that someone else decided to do by themselves for your sake. いただく is when you requested something and they responded to the request, basically. 券をいただく. Yeah. And a similar thing goes for くれる and もらう as well. So often, もらう is used to emphasize the fact that you received something that you requested and you're being thankful for that. Whereas くれる can often also be spontaneous actions that were spontaneous things that were given to you and you're grateful for that. Okay, does that make sense? But that's basically it. I'm not going to talk about where and how and why to use keigo, but I just want you to see that these verbs basically correspond. So if you see them, you can basically convert them back in this direction in your head, and the sentence should hopefully make more sense. But yeah, for me to receive this. So which one would you use for, is it alright for me to receive this? Well, it depends on what you mean. So you could say これをこれをいただいていいですか could work, or いいでしょうか like いただいていいですか could work. くださる is where ください comes from as well, right? Yeah, that's true. くださる is also where we get ください from. 尊敬語と謙譲語。はいはいはい。受けたまわる。Well, you don't have to use 受けたまわる。You can, but yeah. Well, if you want to 受けたまわるという動詞が見たいのなら、ぜひ、金曜日の狼、アマテラス狼、なんか狼というゲームをやってるので、これぜひ見てください。結構こう、古文とかそういうのが出てくるので、受けたまわるも含めてます。Keigo words in my vocab that for the longest time I never knew they mapped to the first three. Well, now you know. Often the way to interpret Keigo is really just doing this backwards mapping, sort of, to go back to more natural, well, Keigo is natural language, but to go back to more casual language often makes understanding Keigo a lot easier. And yeah, it's just a two-way thing. Okay, do you have any more questions? Oh, so you don't say, くださってもいいですか? It depends, you can. I know ko is old. Kobun. Kobun means old grammar, classical Japanese. You can say both. Again, it kind of depends on what Ayafumi said earlier. It's about basically when you use morau or itadaku, it's more about something you asked for. And with kudasaru, or with kureru or kudasaru, more about something someone just did for you. Maybe you didn't even ask. But both of these could work. It's a matter of focus. Yeah, like understanding when to use morau and when to use kureru or ageru is mostly about like where you want to put the focus. And yeah, again, like that thing of morau being sort of often used for things you actually requested, and then saying like, oh, thank you for doing this when I requested, or thank you for actually indulging my request, right? And we'll see a lot more of that next week when we talk about how to combine this with actual actions. So rather than just giving objects, we can also give actions, and that's what we're going to talk about next week, next Wednesday. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, This is basically as far as I want to go for this lesson today. The next thing we're going to do is probably go do some reading, okay, if you're all up for that. That will happen on the Discord server, so if you want to join the Discord server, anyone's invited to do some reading with us all. Hope to see you there. I'm illiterate. No, 教えてくれてありがとうございます. Yeah, that's a good use of てくれる. So thank you very much. Don't go anywhere, because stream is very much going to continue, and we're going to do some light reading, and yeah. But this lesson is over so far. Next week, the same time, I'm going to continue with this and basically talk about 手あげる、手くれる, and 手もらう. And then we'll see how that works and how we can actually receive and give actions. It's, spoiler alert, it's very similar to what we learned today. So if you remember this, what we learned here very well, next week you shouldn't struggle much at all. Like the grammar bits. Yeah, I mean, the grammar bits are fun, aren't they? All right.